How's it going, everybody? This is part of a new series I'm doing as often as I can. Probably going to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but this Friday I'll probably be traveling. So we're going to talk about the top 3 stories of the day, and there's no real... It's just my opinion. The stories that I think are big and important, and then some other cultural stuff after that. So typically we go through the first 3 stories rather quickly, and then we just, there'll be some talking, interacting. So the first thing you should do is subscribe to my channel if you want to get new videos every day at 4 p.m. on news and cultural issues, often on-the-ground reporting, and then periodically live streams like this. You can also click the thumbs up button because that really helps the channel, and if you subscribe, click the little bell because apparently that's important too. Then, if you really want to support my work, pop over to patreon.com/timcast and click Become a Patron, and then become a patron, so that you can help support my work. It is all appreciated. So let's just jump straight into the first story because this is a big one. It's another win for Donald Trump. This is from the Financial Times, and here it is. North Korea is set to release U.S. prisoners at the upcoming summit. So they have a photo of Otto Warmbier, I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong, who died last year after he visited Pyongyang as part of a package tour, but he was arrested for hostile acts against the state and subsequently fell into a coma in mysterious circumstances. North Korea has released the 3 Americans detained in the country's labor camps in a display of goodwill ahead of the looming summit between its supreme leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump, campaigners say. Now, I want to stop here and mention something interesting. The headline is just North Korea is set to release U.S. prisoners at summit. But what we're seeing on Twitter from pro-Trump personalities is that this was at the request of Donald Trump. So is that true? Well, actually, even though the headline doesn't say it, the story actually does. So when you scroll down a little bit, you actually get, it actually says, Mr. Trump confirmed last week that the U.S. and North Korea had been negotiating for the release of 3 Americans. Among the 3 detainees, Kim Dong-chol, a South Korean-born American pastor, was arrested by North Korea in 2015 on charges of spying and sentenced in 2016 to 10 years of hard labor. Kim Hak-sung and Kim Sang-duk, both working for Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, were detained last year on suspicion of hostile acts. North Korean watchers said Pyongyang was paying close attention to the American detainees' health to ensure no repeat of the case of U.S. university student Otto Warmbier, who died 6 days after he was released by the North and sent back to the U.S. last June. Okay, so I want to make sure I don't miss any super chats. I'm going to pop over to the live dashboard, but let's talk a little bit about this story. So, you know what I talked about over the past few days is that there seems to be reluctance to give Donald Trump the win when it comes to anything, really. There are people who just don't like him. I mean, there's the group that call themselves the Resistance, and actually a lot of research refers to that group as the Resistance because it's kind of how they label themselves. But first, we heard that, for one thing, the sanctions on North Korea, Trump's cooperation with China to enforce the sanctions, tough rhetoric has been cited as a contributing factor as well. But now we have North and South Korea with a peace declaration, and if that wasn't enough, we now have North Korea releasing U.S. prisoners. Another huge win for Trump. Got a super chat here from A Swede Speaks. He said, hey, you should go to Oslo and check out the gang violence here. Yeah, maybe. I mean, traveling to Scandinavia and Europe and all that's expensive, so yeah, I can only travel when it's really, I don't know, big breaking stories or hotbed activity, things like that. Investigations are harder and more expensive. So we have the commitment towards denuclearization. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. We have Donald Trump being given credit for the peace talks by the foreign minister of South Korea, by President Moon of South Korea, and by the Prime Minister of Australia. And then we heard just a few days ago that President Moon said Donald Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize. They just want peace. And actually, this part's really interesting, because Reuters reported it as a translation saying Donald Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize. We just want peace. And the reason that's interesting is because from that translation, it sounds like they're actually saying, yes, give Trump the Peace Prize. But I've seen other actual conservative personalities tweet out a separate translation that said Trump can win the Peace Prize. We just want peace. And that translation changes the context entirely. that they're saying, oh, we don't care about the prize. That, sure, give it to Trump. We don't care. We just want peace. But the Reuters translation is them actually saying Trump deserves the Nobel Prize and should win it. So I think depending on, I don't know, who do you believe? Reuters is considered credible, so I tend to go by that. And the other translation, I don't even know who is bringing that up, but it sounds like people who might not even like Trump. When we see this, wow, that's all I got to say. It seems like win after win for Donald Trump as it goes with North Korea. So that's crazy. So we're gonna move on to the next story because I want to go through the stories rather quickly for people who might be repeat viewers watching the VOD version of this. That means video on demand. But you can also use the super chat function to get your comment to appear above everybody else's. If you give at least $5 or more, your comment will appear up top, and it's very easy to see, or any amount really. And I'm being more careful about reading out comments because someone got me to read something really bad that actually might get my channel banned. Because what happens on live streams is someone will super chat, and then it pops up on the screen, and then streamers will just read it out loud and then go, oops. So someone got me. But if you really want to support my work and you don't want to become a patron, hop in the super chat, and I will read out almost all of the super chats. But we have another really big story today, and this one, wow, another huge story. I mean, these are some big stories. Cambridge Analytica is shutting down. This is from Gizmodo. I'm not a huge fan of Gizmodo. I don't trust them, but this is a very basic story. So they had the most up-to-date version of what's happening with Cambridge Analytica, so I decided to use this one. And it looks like, I don't know what this flame means. I think that means it's got a bunch of views or something. But on Wednesday, Cambridge Analytica employees learned that its parent company, the SCL Group, was shuttering the business, with American-based workers directed to return their keycards immediately, according to documentation reviewed by Gizmodo. The news was announced during a conference call led by Julian Wheatland, the current chairman of the SCL Group, who was reportedly tapped to take over as Cambridge Analytica's next CEO. Both Cambridge Analytica and SCL Elections, that's SCL Group subsidiary connected to Cambridge Analytica, will now close their doors. So they did issue a statement, and looks like here's what we have. In a press release, Cambridge Analytica announced that it, SCL Elections, and other affiliated companies have filed for insolvency in the UK, with bankruptcy proceedings in the US to follow. Despite Cambridge Analytica's unwavering confidence that its employees have acted ethically and lawfully, which view is now fully supported by a third-party audit, the siege of media coverage has driven away virtually all of the company's customers and suppliers, states the release. As a result, it has been determined that it is no longer viable to continue operating the business, which left Cambridge Analytica with no realistic alternative to placing the company into administration. They have another update. Asked for clarification, the Wall Street Journal confirmed that Oak said the entire SCL Group, not just subsidiary SCL Elections, was shutting down. We have updated our story to reflect this information. Well, there's a few things I want to bring up in relation to the story. I want to grab these super chats real quick. Someone's asking if I can interview Stephanie Kelton. I'm tired of this "how are you going to pay for it" BS. We pay for any policy with congressional appropriations. I'm down to interview anybody. I mean, whether or not that can be organized is the tougher question, and I'd have to look into more about what that story is about. Noel Campbell said, "Keep it up, Tim. Don't give up on being true to journalism. True journalism." Thank you for the super chat. Dude20 says, "Thoughts on Maddox's frivolous lawsuit? Guy who runs the best page in the universe against Nick Masterson, Asterios, and Patreon for $20 million each. Do you think it goes against the First Amendment?" Boy, do I have a lot of thoughts on that. That is a story that, no matter how I approach, I get inundated by fans of The Dick Show, either insulting or critiquing or challenging me, and then they start posting memes about me. And the reason why I'm probably not going to go anywhere near it or even comment on any of the actual claims of the case is that when I decided that the fervor I'd been receiving over Maddox and Dick for the past several months warranted at least asking some of my core patrons, people who gave at least $10 or more, what they thought about it. Someone bought into my Patreon. So, like, for whatever reason, fans of The Dick Show were on my Patreon account. I don't know why. I don't go to their Reddit. I have no idea why. But apparently some fans of The Dick Show went to my Patreon account, signed up, got access to my post that was meant to go to people who are giving $10 or more, which is not a large group. It's around 200, and then screen grabbed the post, posted it to their subreddit, and then started using that to insult me and claim that I was a bad journalist and things like that. They took the post out of context as if to imply that the only way I would cover the story is if people already knew about it, as if I was asking the general population if they knew about a story instead of covering it and telling the general population about a story, when in reality, the people who give me $10 or more are more connected and more, they tend to be more informed. Not all of them, but the idea is the people who are very active and getting the behind-the-scenes content and stuff when the travel style, like behind-the-scenes updates, are more informed on my day-to-day business, and just, I don't know, it's a small group. And so I wanted to see if this tiny sample size was familiar with the story, and if they thought it was important and worth covering. In fact, in the poll I put up, most of them said that they either didn't know about it, or even though they did, they didn't really think it was worth covering, though some of them did think it was worth covering. And then so this group, Dick's fans, then took that post, screen grabbed it, posted it to their Reddit. So, I guess the main issue is I don't know why his fans were going to my Patreon account anyway. I do know for a fact that it was one of his fans, because the person who posted it clicked one of the polls, and I could see what number they were in the vote, and Patreon actually tells me. So I could see their email, I could see when they signed up, and they signed up and canceled right away. And so basically, there's a large group of people that have been tweeting at me incessantly trying to get me to cover the story. And I was like, look, I don't know if this story is that big, because the other thing people need to realize is that the same fans were tweeting at me nonstop even before there was a lawsuit, saying the exact same things. So when you get inundated with a bunch of people and you don't know who they are, and they start talking about something that you don't know what they're talking about, no one else is talking about it, you kind of just say, look, I have to prioritize the big story in the news, kind of like what's happening with Cambridge Analytica. And then when another thing happens between these two, it's basically like Maddox and this guy Dick are two internet personalities that are having a feud with each other. And I think the only reason they're actually coming at me is because they're desperately trying to, get stones for their side of the fight. In which case, even talking about it now is absurd, but Dude 2.0, you asked, and I answered, so thank you for the super chat. Every time I talk about it, it just gets worse. Because I would be willing to bet $100 someone from Dick's page is going to take everything I said, take it out of context, post it to a subreddit, and they're going to use it as fuel for their show. Because that's what they do. The show that this guy Dick does tends to talk about Maddox all the time. So I barely know anything about why they're fighting, yet for whatever reason they like to pull me in, insult me, and make me part of their drama, of which I think, I talked to Maddox 7 times in my life. Maybe I've been in his presence like 4 or 5 times. And that's what got them angry, is that I did some videos with him in the past, because he's an internet personality. I do videos with internet personalities. And they're trying to rope me into their personal drama. So we got I'm going to move on from this now for people who probably don't care. Bold Like a Leopard said, dude, I know I'm being a chode, but you gotta help me exposing the Mats file at Maddow, HuffPo, Politico, all implicated. I read through the email. I still don't know if I understand the entirety of what it is, and it's, I don't know. So I'll keep looking at it, and I'll see if, I don't know. I hate to give that answer, but I've got trips coming up. I've got, it's hard to do investigations, to say the least. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. And this, I'm not trying to be a dick, but it's not on the front burner right now for me. So I've got to deal with a bunch of, I've got bills, costs, etc. I've got trying to set up the live show, trying to make sure that YouTube keeps working. We still have one more big story for the day that I want to get to before we hit that 20-minute mark for people who might be coming on the VOD. But let me hit this next super chat. Stedman Wells says, love what you do, Tim. Please never give up. Have you ever considered opening a Discord to get involved with your fans? It might be a good way to broaden the conversation and your following. I do have a Discord. Is the Discord link not... The Discord link is in the description of the stream. So if you want to get in the Discord, in the description section below... Let me see where it's at. It says support journalism, and then below that is a link to the Discord. If that doesn't work, let me know and I'll fix it. Someone's asking if... Someone said streaming the same time as Ruben and Yaron Brooks. Yikes. Well, I can't predict when other people are going to stream, and my plan is to do Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. In fact, I might even do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday every day. It just depends on if I have the energy and the time. Last night I was busy. Today I have the time. But hey, 586 people watching, good enough for me. So people are asking me if I'm going to London. Yes. I don't know what the deal is with the big event. I don't know if I will actually be at the event. None of that's confirmed. I don't want to act like that's the sole reason I'm going. I'm probably going to do an interview with some other personalities. Hope K, Super Chat. Thanks for the $2 Super Chat. Richie says, I look tired AF. I'm not tired. I have been skating like every day. So I'm getting like, whew, and I'm not eating a lot of sugar, which maybe, and I don't mean like sugar like candy. I mean just like, for whatever reason, I've been eating a lot of protein. Not really on purpose. Maybe I should have some rice or something. Because when I go skating, man, if you don't have, I know there's a lot of people that are like pro keto and anti-sugar. I'm not that hardcore. I just try to eat healthier and have more protein and less sugar. But trying to engage in like strenuous activities like skateboarding when you're eating a ton of protein, actually, like, my body's readjusting. So someone says, you need to change ruler of stars. You need to change the settings so I can roll back to the start of the stream. If I miss 5 minutes, I'm not going to watch if I can't roll back. DVR is enabled. I mean, on maybe that only works if, no, I don't know. I don't know how to change that because it's yeah. Someone says eat more fruit. Fruit, you don't want to eat too much of it. It's high in fructose, and fructose is rough on the liver. Kevin O'Neill says, aha, I knew putting that link in the description was a good idea. How's your day, Tim? So far, so good. I had a good day. I shot my video in the morning talking about the Chinese prom dress. If you haven't seen it, check that out. And how basically the story is this guy, Jeremy Lamb, who called out this woman for wearing a Chinese prom dress, actually posted several racial slurs, possibly posted these racial slurs because they could be photoshopped, but he did apologize for his past behavior. So whatever he was apologizing for, I think it's likely it was that he was posting racial slurs. Let's hit this last story real quick and then carry on with the conversation, because this last story is also really interesting. And then I got another little cultural tidbit you can see up here. It's talking about Jordan Peterson. But from the Associated Press, the black men arrested at Starbucks have settled with the company. And this is interesting because they have settled with Starbucks for an undisclosed sum and an offer of a free college education. That's really weird. So what we can say is, depending on their college education, that could be $100,000 each, 4 years. So you got at least $200,000. I mean, maybe it's a cheaper college. Maybe they're going to do it in-state and it's only going to be $10,000 or $20,000. Could be a lot less. But they've also reached a deal with the city for a symbolic $1 each and a promise from officials to set up a $200,000 program for young entrepreneurs. A promise. I got to say, guys, you won against Starbucks. Congratulations on your victory. I wouldn't take a promise from a city and expect it to be fulfilled. The $1 symbolic settlement, I can appreciate that because it doesn't do damage to the taxpayer. It doesn't do damage, but that's an honorable victory. You might not agree with how these guys handled what they did. You might not agree with any of the situation, but it's much better to see that they took a symbolic victory over actually trying to get the city to pay out a massive amount. However, if they do, this $200,000 program that is the city paying this out, and this is an interesting story, because if you're not familiar, these two guys were sitting in a Starbucks. They didn't order any drinks. One of them asked to use the bathroom, and then whatever happened in between this, the Starbucks manager called the police and said the men refused to leave and they wouldn't order anything. Apparently, these guys were waiting for a friend. Now, this is an interesting conversation, or interesting story, because my opinion on the matter kind of, I don't know, it's like a lefty opinion, I guess. I've seen a lot of people who are like anti-SJW or skeptic, whatever you want to call it, saying, why didn't they just pay for their drink? Why should they get to stay in Starbucks if they don't pay for, if they're not paying for anything and they should leave and things like that? And man, I gotta say, it sounds like from the story, the way they described the story, they were there for a few minutes, like 5 minutes, but they may have actually been there for like 20 minutes. But I just gotta say, man, I have been to Starbucks dozens of times with my laptop, walked in, sat down, got to work, used their bathroom without buying anything. You know, so when I hear that these guys were asked to leave, I'm not surprised they took it upon themselves to be like, no, you know, because there's so oftentimes a lot of people who come to Starbucks and just do their thing and no one cares, you know. So I think people need to, but there's a fair point to be made that they chose to get arrested. 100% they chose to get arrested, because when the police finally show up, the police, you can even see in the video, they're like, you're going to be arrested if you don't leave. And they say, okay, arrest me. And so that's standing up for their principles. And if they're, you know, I actually have a ton of respect for anybody who would stand up for their principles. And if these guys were upset because Starbucks is treating them differently, or at least that's how they perceived it to be, I really can't believe Starbucks would call the cops because a couple guys were just sitting down in their chairs. Is it worth the confrontation? Is it worth the bad PR? Let me tell you a story. I once went to a McDonald's. This is like 10 years ago. And I ordered a double cheeseburger. No pickles, no onions. I just want ketchup mayo. That's how I like my cheeseburgers. I don't eat a lot of cheeseburgers anymore, though. But this is 10 years ago. They give me the burgers. They're in a bag. I drive home. And they were just the worst made burgers ever. Just awful. I spent $2. So I called up and I asked for the manager. And I said, you know, I hate to do this because I hate complaining. But these were made, like, really bad. It's like the buns were ripped. And there was, like, mayonnaise prints, like, from someone's hand on it. And I was like, it's kind of gross. I don't know, man. And the manager apologized, and he said, dude, don't even worry about it. What's your name? I was like, my name's Tim. He's like, come back whenever you want. We'll make you up some nice burgers. I'll make sure they're made perfect. And I was like, all right, cool, man. I can appreciate that. That's rad. So a couple days later, when I'm driving past the McDonald's, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. They're going to remake my burgers for me. So I pull in, and I go up to the drive-thru, and I'll tell you why the story is good because apparently this guy ended up losing the drive-thru guy lost his job over this. But let me tell you what happened. I pulled up to the drive-thru and I said, hey, last night I spoke with the manager, Mark. He told me he wrote my name down on a receipt in his office and that you guys would remake my double cheeseburgers. Seriously, it's $2. But I figured, hey, man, you know, the manager was a cool dude, and I was upset over my burgers. I didn't think it was that big a deal. It was a casual conversation. You know, I'm not a very angry person. And the guy says to pull up to the window. I pull up. And then he says to me, no, leave. And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, leave. And I was like, I spoke with the manager, Mark. He said he wrote my name on a receipt. It's in his office. And he goes, hold on. Guy leaves. This is a drive-thru window. Comes back, and he goes, no, leave. And I was like, excuse me, dude. Is the manager here? Can I speak to the manager or someone else? And he goes, no. And I was like, where's the manager at? And he's like, not here. And I'm like, okay, when's the manager going to be here? And he's like, he'll be here in a couple hours. And I was like, okay, man, I just drove up here. It's just $2. Like, the manager, is my name not on the receipt? And the guy was like, I'm not helping you. You're scamming us, and you need to leave. And I was like, all right, I left. A couple hours later, I called in, told the manager what happened, and he was like, what? Your name's on the receipt. It's in my office. It's on my, you know, whatever those boards are called. I don't know. I say it's got on the wall. And so I go back to McDonald's. And the manager walks out, shakes my hand. I dress the exact same way my whole life. You know, I got a skateboard, I have jeans and a t-shirt and a beanie. And the guy's like, I am so terribly sorry that happened. I cannot believe the way you were treated. We're letting this guy go. That is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Especially because I gave everyone a note that you were coming in, that I apologized to you. And I got to be honest, man, $2 is not worth upsetting a customer. I'll tell you what, man, I'll hand you $2 right now. And I started laughing, and I was like, dude, I'm not mad at the guy. You know, he thought he was doing what was right, and the manager was apparently upset. He was like, if I give clear instructions to my employees, let them know that we have a customer who we need to take care of to make sure they're happy, and it's $2. If they can't do that, we're in serious trouble. So that was crazy to me, and I felt kind of bad. And then they made my cheeseburgers for me. But the point of that story is, Starbucks could have just let it go. Said, okay, man, you know, they're going to sit here. They said they're waiting for their friend. We'll see what happens. But they decided to call the police, and that made a huge PR disaster for them and serious negative ramifications for basically everybody involved. You know, I got a super chat here from No Good. He says, Gavin McInnes, hit job going on. See Vic Berger 4 on Gav's old show. He used the N-word a lot, and a compilation is being used to get him off CRTV. Yep. Well, I mean, did he really use the N-word a lot? I don't know if there's a defense for that. I mean, if you think it's fine to use racial slurs, that's up to you. I think it's fair to say that typically society doesn't appreciate racial slurs. If Gavin really did that, then I think he's in trouble. I think advertisers aren't going to want to be associated with that. What are you going to do? That's tough. But thanks for the super chat. Subject to change says, don't feel bad for anything. That was I'm not going to swear, employee. Someone says, that is how you manage a McDonald's. Yeah, plain and simple. You know, what was told to me is that, this is what they told me, I don't know if this is true, he said, but they had a policy that any complaint under $5 you just give to the customer. Because it is not worth bad PR, and it is not worth losing a customer for life to make them upset. Their goal, what he was explaining to me is like, look, you know, if you're upset for whatever reason, even if you're trying to steal cheeseburgers by lying to us, it's not going to cost us anything. What's a bigger risk? Giving away $5 in cheeseburgers, or denying someone $5 in cheeseburgers and then losing a customer for life? And, you know, I really appreciate it. He was a great, that was a good dude. Astropan says, hey, Tim, like your work, Starbucks and cafes in Vancouver aren't letting people come in with laptops anymore. Guess they don't want people clogging up the seating. Wow. But Starbucks is where you go to write your book, you know? People go there to write. I go to Starbucks to upload videos sometimes. Matthew Reed says, love your channel. Cheers. Out of curiosity, have you ever met Jordan Peterson in person? No, but he did send me an autographed copy of his book. I think that's just because if you're verified on Twitter and you follow him, he likes... Because a bunch of my friends got books from him too. I did reach out to him before because we wanted to do an interview with him about a documentary on free speech. And I gotta say, man, we ended up doing an interview with Brett Weinstein, and we did a podcast with him and Heather Hying, and it was awesome. And then we stuck around the Pacific Northwest during like the James Damore event with Peter Boghossian, and then we did another podcast with Peter Boghossian. That was great. But a lot of these professors didn't want to come on camera and do the interviews, and I think for obvious reasons. Like, this is a really dangerous issue to be involved in. You can lose your job. Yeah, so I got a lot of response from people saying they didn't want to be involved. So we have that, you know, chilling on a burner. One thing we're looking at now is we want to do... I don't know if it's too early to talk about this, but one of the ideas we have on the whiteboard, the metaphorical whiteboard, we have a bunch of ideas for, like, documentaries we want to do. It's me and Emily. And one of them is about Gamergate. To actually look into the claims of Gamergate, what happened, and talk with people about, you know, just the story. So we've been doing some research into that. And as you know, we did a podcast episode where we talked about it, and I'm very ignorant on a lot of what happened with it. I know a little bit about what happened, but, you know, not as in-depth as many of the core, you know, people involved on either side. So, you know, we kind of thought, okay, this would be cool. And it came about because of, for one, God of War. I'm gonna piss off Emily, but I don't think she thinks it deserves such high ratings. I think she was talking about how she likes the game, but that she doesn't understand why everyone's giving it such high scores. And then you have Far Cry 5 getting, you know, lambasted for being like just basically. There's an interesting aspect of the culture war in that movies get negative reviews because of their politics, and games get negative reviews because of their politics. And if you agree or symbolize the politics of some of the left, then all of a sudden the media is praising you. And that's a scary prospect, you know, because movie reviews and game reviews are supposed to explain to you whether if the story is good, if the game is good. I remember when game reviews were really simple. It was like, the controls are not that great. The character isn't very responsive, and we thought the storyline was lacking. Some of the mechanics are a bit glitchy. Play this game, you know, if you want, but we're going to give it a 5 out of 10. And then you'd be like, wow, controls are bad, get glitchy, the story is weak. Instead now, reviews for games are like, why wasn't the main character anti-Trump? I don't like the fact that, and this is a legitimate review. There was a review that said one of the characters felt anxious because in Far Cry 5, there is a conservative character who calls people libtards, but he's a good guy who gives you quests, and that made them nervous or something. Yeah. So those are the kind of reviews, and that doesn't tell me anything about the game. You know, if you're going to review a game, just tell me if the controls are good. Tell me if the graphics are an improvement. Tell me if it's an open world environment. Tell me if it's a linear game. I'm not asking you for your political opinion. Sammy R.I. says, I write my books at home, LOL, and you have friends? Question mark. I don't know what that is referring to. John Doe says, have you been in contact with Benjamin Boyce, YouTuber and Evergreen alumni, about free speech and Evergreen College? Actually, Emily has. And so on the Subverse page, we have a sort of like mini doc about the Brett Weinstein thing, the Brett Weinstein fiasco, whatever people are calling it. And I think we did use some of his footage. And this was like a kind of a rough cut. It wasn't, what we wanted to do with that was actually interview a ton of other professors and make one big piece about everything, and even talk to student activists. But you can imagine that takes a really, really long time. A lot of people refused to do it, and, we couldn't get a lot of the interviews, so we decided, we'll do this interview, we'll go down, he'll show us around, and we'll make this about his perspective on what happened. Plain and simple. Someone's asking if I'm going to the Day for Freedom thing in London. I will be in London. I don't know yet what's going on with Day for Freedom, and I think people need to realize that you've got, in the video, Lauren Southern, Brittany Pettibone, and Martin Zellner, who were all banned from the country. I don't even know if they're allowed back in, so I don't even know what's going on with it, and I don't want to act like that's the intention, but, there's going to be some people in London worth talking to, so whether or not the event happens, I'm hoping to get a conversation with Count Dankula. There's a couple things that I want to do. I want to talk with Count Dankula because I feel like most of the news has been about his case and not about him, and I think it would be great to have a sit-down conversation about Count Dankula outside of his case and the appeal and all that stuff. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, but the idea is to focus more on, he's a comedian, he has a career. The court case and his career kind of got a huge kickstart at the same time. That Nazi pug video went viral before he got in trouble for it. So he was getting a ton of attention for his funny video that probably would have led to him being a big YouTuber, and then the court case just helped kick it into high gear. So I think it'll be interesting conversation. One thing I really want to do as well is well, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give too much away. But I'm hoping to meet some people who have been accused of being far right and have them do political compass tests, and just be like, the media has claimed this is you. Let's do a political compass test to determine whether or not you really are far right. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when these people come up as like liberal or leftist, and the reason for it is, like, I get accused of being alt-right or some other ridiculous nonsense when I'm like, I even have like, people got mad at me for my opinion on the Starbucks thing because they were like, calling me a libtard or whatever. Because there are even liberals who disagree with what these guys at Starbucks did and said they should have just left. And my opinion was like, they stood up for their principles. I respect that, and, things like that. But, I take the political compass test. Sargon took the political compass test. We're center-left. Plain and simple. But we get accused of being right. Now, Sargon more so than I do. But, a few outlets have accused me of being alt-right. The latest was The Guardian saying, they didn't explicitly call me alt-right because they'd have to issue an apology like the SPLC did. But they said, YouTube star Tim Pool, who claims he isn't alt-right, but is, like, chummy with them. And it's like, this is the most intellectually dishonest nonsense. I sit down for an interview for a bunch of people after the Portland rally. A photo comes out of me sitting at the table, and they accuse me of, like, it's ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. They have no real argument, so they have to try and do guilt by association. And that's what's really funny. The idea that the SPLC, that Willamette Weekly or The Guardian would try to assume, like, imply that I'm alt-right when I've literally never expressed an opinion about these issues. I take that back. I've expressed opinions about issues like migration, and they tend to lean left or be relatively neutral. But I guess that's enough, right? Another thing that we should talk about. Let's hop over to this. Let me hop over to this story real quick. Here you go. Just read it. Just read that. Canadian author finds fame as alt-right intellectual. And yes, they're talking about Jordan Peterson, who the alt-right does not like because Jordan Peterson disagrees with identitarianism and with collectivism, and the alt-right has been very critical of Jordan Peterson. So this is NBC. This isn't like MSNBC, which is far left. This is literally NBC News, which is supposed to be like very basic. And look at this. Oh, you can see I gave it a thumbs down. I'll tell you why I gave it a thumbs down. It's because it's fake news. This is fake news. Look, if somebody wants to get into a war over what someone really is, and there's reasons to argue as to whether or not they think someone's conservative, sure. But to say that Jordan Peterson, who has vocally opposed the alt-right, and who has been opposed by the alt-right, is an alt-right intellectual is literal fake news, and they didn't do any work. But you can see that there's only 70 likes on this video, 32,000 views, 11,000 thumbs down. What were they thinking? The guy who made this piece, what was he thinking? This is just absolutely ridiculous. And he interviews this guy who claims, this guy right here, John Semley, says that they, Jordan Peterson is aligned with Trump voters because they believe in the inherent hierarchy, which is like a right-wing thing. Wow. Let me just say that. Wow. You know what, man? Why do you think that is? Let me get these super chats. Ruler of Stars says, the rewind was broken on my end. Sorted now. There you go. And Funny Business Investigator said, I just wanted to say that Black Rifle Coffee is the best coffee in existence. Also wanted to ask what the best way to contact you is if I wanted to send you footage that you might be able to use. My email. So my email is tim@tagg.ly. It's up on my my Twitter account. And thank you for the super chat. And you can also send me some Black Rifle Coffee if that's something you're involved in. In the bottom of the information, the description box, I've got a P.O. box. I don't promote it a lot, and people send me stuff periodically, so I think I need to do another video where, like I mentioned, I have it, because people have been trying to send me stuff, and then I have to be like, hey, like at the bottom, I have a thing that says send stuff here, and, I get letters a lot of times, letters of encouragement, which I really appreciate, so. Aslord Mega says, they just trying to be like Kathy Newman. Yep. And now it's 12,060. Oh, it's up to 12,000 now. Oh yeah, the dislikes are up now to 12,000. It's not. It just says 12K to me. It doesn't show me the actual number. But let me show you something else that's really cool while we're at it. So over here on the right side, I've got two plugins. I've got Social Blade, which shows the channel stats, so you can see how many subs they've gained and their grade. A lot of this is kind of whatever. But you can actually go straight to the Social Blade or look at their live sub count. But here's one thing that I use for everything. A lot of people have always asked me about this. This is vidIQ. So vidIQ shows me their overall score, which is how they grade it. You can see how many views per hour. You can see total views, the duration of the video. But here's something that's interesting. The engagement. It's 84.7% YouTube, 13.1% Reddit, and 2.1% Facebook. It also shows me Reddit upvotes, Reddit comments, and Reddit posts. So this is what I say to people. When you post one of my videos to Reddit, it shows me. And then I can click, Reddit upvotes, and then it shows me all of the posts. So you've got The Donald, Great Awakening, Kotaku in Action, Jordan Peterson, Cringe Anarchy, Enough Peterson Spam. This one. So some of these are critical of Jordan Peterson, but this is what I use. And it shows you that, yeah, there you go. How many likes it has, Facebook engagements, Reddit comments, Reddit posts, Facebook followers, Twitter followers. So those are the plugins I've got. And there you have it. Canadian author finds fame as alt-right intellectual. See, people don't take 2 seconds to Google search what alt-right means. I don't, people are always like, Tim, you're such a great journalist. And I'm like, I don't think I'm that great. I just do my thing. And people are supportive, and I appreciate it. But then you know what happens to my ego when I see things like this? I'm like, wow, I must be a great journalist because I literally Google searched the phrase alt-right. That's what blows my mind. That in order to be a good journalist, all you have to do is understand the definition of words and not apply an incorrect label to somebody. Is one way to be a good journalist. I don't know who produced this piece, but clearly they don't know who Jordan Peterson is at all. They're either in a crazy bubble. I mean, actually, I can look at the tags and see if they've got any. I mean, it blows my mind that you can be a journalist talking to a clinical psychologist who is telling you how people behave and what they recommend to people, and then to say, oh, that person's wrong, he's just alt-right. How does that happen? I don't know how that's a thing, honestly. Okay, let's see. Nicholas Vidal says, if anybody here hasn't seen it yet, I recommend you guys watch, and especially Tim, to watch Humanity from Ricky Gervais. It's pure golden. Ricky Gervais defended Count Dankula, which is really impressive, because a lot of people, side, actually, who's that guy? Graham Linehan? I don't know his name. But there's this comedian who made old jokes about Nazis, mocking Nazis, and now he's attacking Count Dankula. Like, how does that happen? That's hypocrisy, right? Am I wrong? Someone says, I can't hear you on my headphones. Volume up, please. Is that just you? I mean, someone says, I see you ironed your flag. No, I didn't. I haven't touched that flag. Let me go through some of the... 2Nano says, JBP is a Christian apologist. I've heard that Jordan Peterson's actually, like, very religious, but I don't think he talks about it. And you know what I say is, I don't care what your religion is. Just don't ram it down people's throats. Don't force people to believe what you believe. If Jordan Peterson, you know, is religious, but sure, I don't care. If someone says, Jordan Peterson, I'd love to hear about your religion. He talks about it. Great, I don't care. If he went around preaching, you know, telling people they were going to burn and stuff like that, that's when I'm like, come on, man. But he doesn't do that, so. Oh, no good. It says, have you seen the new O'Keefe vids? Do you like him? Have criticisms? Project Veritas has a new video up. Let me pull this up. Because this was freaky. The new Project Veritas video. I mean, I don't know what my opinion. Like, Veritas is just another organization. I mean, they're partisan. So when I see their content, I assign it to that partisan, you know, idea. It doesn't mean I think they're liars. It just thinks it makes me think that there's going to be a perspective and that they're aiming to, you know, address or highlight certain issues. Sure. Everybody does it. The left, the right. The only thing that really matters is that when you're looking at these stories and these sources, you know what their perspective is. So I say, oh, okay, I know Project Veritas is conservative. Let me look at other sources. However, let me. I don't want to steal their thunder or anything. I'll just show a quick clip of this intro, and then you guys can check it out if you want. But these opening sound bites.
I got people who are on drugs, and she 5 times was fired, and I got her job back 5 times. But it's my job. It's almost like being a priest. It's my job to protect. Listen, if you hit the kid, you hit the kid. It is what it is. He needs to not tell a soul about this. Nobody. If nobody brings it up from school, I don't say boo. Okay?
So after a certain point, the camera is like erased.
Exactly. That's why I would never want to bring it up. The longer we wait, the longer there's no camera.
Okay,
now, if you go to the Hoboken Board of Education and report this, they're gonna call the police and they're gonna call parents and all that. We don't do that. We don't do that here. I'm here to defend even the worst people. But I don't want them coming here with a bunch of lies. I need to know the truth so that we can bend the truth.
Yeah, so I think Veritas, they do a good job for what they do. Obviously, they get a lot of flack from people who accuse them of selective editing, but everybody does selective editing. I think it's a cop-out. And I think, look, that was some, you know, what is it, Township Education Association, a president, he's a union guy, talking about getting someone their job back when they're on drugs and they're getting fired for it. Talking about how, you know, so basically what happened was they went in and claimed that the brother-in-law of this woman, this undercover reporter, hit a student. And this guy is like, don't tell anybody, the cameras will get erased, you know, don't worry about it, I'm going to protect you even if I have to bend the truth and all that stuff. So that's interesting. And in this instance, there's a lot going on with teacher strikes. And I think that's why James O'Keefe has decided to start going after these teachers' unions. But let me just say, excuse me, not a fan of institutionalized learning facilities. Not a fan of, how do I describe this? Immutable unions, right? So there comes a point where unions just become as bad as the organization that's supposed to protect people from, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of unions. I'm a total fan of collective bargaining, but there are rules placed around unions, and there are people working in unions who are bad people. I'll explain more in a second. So it's Color Sky Super Chat. If you could interview anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why? What would you ask them? Oof, I don't know. Interview anyone. I don't know. I think it'd be fun to interview Obama, because I'd ask him a bunch of questions that I would never be actually allowed to ask him, and he'd give me probably fake answers and leave the interview. You know, things like extrajudicial assassinations, drone strikes. One of the funny things that somebody posted earlier was there's a meme that Obama was the first Nobel Prize winner to bomb another Nobel Prize winner because he drone striked Doctors Without Borders, who also won a Nobel Prize. So, yeah, that'd be fun. Boar Creek Ranch said, Tim, there's a national rally taking place May 19th. 24 cities march for our rights. Check Timcast email for details. Please come speak or cover one of the events. National rally, I don't know what March for Our Rights is, but I tend not to speak at events that are political because it depends, right? So there have been instances where I've been asked to speak about like free speech and stuff, and that's something where I'll just be like, yeah, you know, I'll speak about free speech. It's important. But I try not to overly, like, I don't want to associate directly with any political faction or anything like that, you know, so I typically avoid that kind of stuff. But I want to say one quick thing about what my beef is with unions. Specifically, I've worked for a few different unions, but I worked for the Transportation Workers Union. And basically, there were people who didn't have to do any work because they were on like board positions. They got bits of my money. I was forced to join the union that I didn't want to be in. I said, look, let me get paid my, $10 an hour and I'll do my job. I don't want to have anything to do with this union. I don't want union meetings. I don't want to pay union dues. And they say, if you don't join the union, you can't take the job. And that to me is totally screwed up. If you don't want to be in union, why are they forcing you to be in a union? I don't appreciate that. And I know that some places are passing laws saying that you can't do that anymore. You can't force people to join unions. I was also forced to be in a union when I was like 16 and working at a grocery store. Why I don't care. Why am I giving a portion of my paycheck, which is already microscopic, to people I don't know, so they can claim they're fighting for me? I don't care, man. I understand that there was a point at which unions did a lot of great things, but what people don't realize is that it wasn't necessarily about the union, it was about the collective bargaining. When everyone said, you know what, we're all going to come together and say, we're negotiating on behalf of this entire group with the employer, and the employer says, okay, fine, I'll give you what you need to keep the business running. It's different when people don't actually know who's in the union, you're forced to join it, and then you've got an elite tier of individuals who get to do whatever they want. So I think collective bargaining is fantastic. I think the idea of unions have become bloated and corrupt. Not all of them. There are small ones that do a good job. But in my experience, it's the core of what a union is supposed to be is a good thing. But what ends up happening is much different. And so I was on a panel during Occupy Wall Street where someone criticized Occupy Wall Street for not coming out against unions and like corruption and stuff like that. And everyone in the panel was like, no, but unions are so good and important. And then I was like, wait, hold on. I don't like unions. And everyone, like, it was a collective gasp, like, but you're at Occupy Wall Street. And I was like, no, listen, collective bargaining is amazing. When people come together and form a group to collectively bargain with their employer about what they deserve and what needs to happen in the workplace, perfect. But when you have a union as it exists today, there's a bunch of rules, there's a bunch of laws. It's actually illegal for some unions to strike. What's the point of being in a union if you can't even strike? You're not going to get anything you want because they know you can't do it. Like, I'm pretty sure firefighters and like others, emergency services can't strike. Dude 20 says, I think Dick Show fans are upset because you made Maddox look like a free speech guy in a video where he is suing a guy over satire. Dude 20, I think it's entirely fair to say that the issue of the lawsuit is way more complicated than it's over satire. You've got, saying it's over satire is clearly coming from a Dick Show perspective. So if you watch the Dick Show, you probably believe that's exactly what's going on. But if you have nothing to do with either side, it looks like a flame war between two personalities who broke up and now a fight is happening. You have one fight that is overt, where the Dick Show posts memes and mocks and ridicules, and then you have the other side of Maddox, like filing lawsuits and calling employers and things like that. And when I look at that, I'm like, I don't know who's right. Both groups think they're right. Don't come and yell at me and start going to my Patreon and screen grabbing my stuff just because I was trying to talk to my core group of patrons. That's gonna make me say, like, you guys crossed the line. Why would I want to give you guys coverage? Not only that, if I did cover the story, it's not going to come out the way they want it to, and that's why I know it's a bad idea. It's a small group of people. It's not a big story, and I know that even if I did cover it, they wouldn't like what I would uncover. They assume they would, but they wouldn't. I assure you of that. And then they would probably start attacking me, saying, "Oh, I'm lying," or "I'm friends with Maddox," and other stupid fake news. So that's why I'm like, you know what, man, the story isn't that big anyway. So they're accusing Maddox of filing a frivolous lawsuit. Why does that matter? If they're so confident that he's going to lose, then how is it a free speech issue? It's not. If they're confident they're going to win, then there's no story. Got a super chat here from James Leman saying, I'm thinking about creating video sharing website and app competing against YouTube. Is there any suggestions to increase customers and viewership in this startup? Bandwidth is too expensive. Right now, there are 773 people watching. I'm broadcasting probably at around 2 megabits per second. Multiply that by 733, and then you have 774, including myself, the upload and the download, and then you're looking at the total bandwidth. So we're looking at a massive stream of megabytes going across, and so that's going to affect bandwidth. YouTube is eating this cost because they're subsidized by Google. In doing so, they're preventing competition. So I don't appreciate the fact that because YouTube is strangling out the competition by subsidizing, Google subsidizing YouTube prevents competition from forming. That's bad. It is what it is. But I know a lot of people who have tried to, they want to create some kind of video platform, but it's way too expensive. Just way too expensive. BitChute using torrent for video is a good idea. So that's why I have someone's got a comment, but I use BitChute to back up. Someone says, Nick Coleman, I used to respect you till you allowed Mundane Matt on your show, lost all credibility. Nick, I don't really know who Mundane Matt is outside of his YouTube channel, and if there's some controversy involving him, I had the guy on the show one time, so if you really hate him that much, to the point where you're going to impugn my honor simply by having him on to talk about some issues, then I don't think you had respect for my credibility in the first place, to put it simply. Jamada D says, rich give money to activists, activists work for unions, unions strike and give billions to the politicians, BLM, Antifa are Gov union members, tax money. It's a really complicated issue, but it's, there was a group at Occupy Wall Street that did receive, the organization did receive funding from George Soros, but the individual activists don't see Soros checks, right? So what happens is, when the right claims that George Soros is funding all these activists, they all start laughing like, oh yeah, like I've ever received a check, because they think you're saying that he's literally cutting checks and handing them to activists, when in reality, he's giving money to nonprofits that have activists who go out to protests and flyer and fundraise, in which case many of the people, there was a small group of people, I don't think it's big, but maybe a dozen, who were at Occupy Wall Street, who worked for a nonprofit, who were told by their nonprofit to stop working in the office and to go out and join the protest. And that's how it works. I don't think the problem is as big as most people think it is, but there is something there. Somebody says Mundane Matt is an idiot, but to hate Tim for that is just stupid. Someone said Mundane Matt is one of the known sellouts on YouTube. I don't have any beef with him. We're friendly. I wouldn't call us friends. I wouldn't call myself friends with a lot of people because, to be quite honest, the people I hang out with tend to be like lefty skateboarders. That's what's really funny. People are like accusing me of being alt-right, and literally the only people I hang out with are like hippie vaping skateboarders. Like they're not on my YouTube channel or anything like that. I don't go to political events like party with. I don't even drink. Like that was the funny thing, because someone accused me of having beers with the alt-right, and I'm like, I don't drink beer. Everybody who knows me knows that I don't drink. I drink ridiculously healthy beverages. You want to know what I drink? I get club soda with a shot of lemon juice in it. That's my drink. So if you ever see me, like I was just in London for like the thing with Sargon and Liberalists, and everybody's trying to buy me a drink. Not everybody, a handful of people are like, Tim, let me buy you a beer, and I'm like, I don't drink. But you can get me a club soda with lemon juice in it. That's what I drink. It's a very, very healthy beverage. You should drink it. I'm not even kidding. There's vitamin C in it. Not too much sugar. It's kind of like a lemonade, not too sweet. Fizzy soda. Soda's great. And then you do some lemon juice, and then it's really good. It's got like prevents cancer. Just a whole bunch of it. Just Google it. It's really, really healthy. Nicole Marie says, it costs $500K to fire an incompetent teacher. We have a lot of those teachers in our public schools who just float around since they can't be fired. Exactly. 100%. I can't tell you how many bad teachers I've had. I've had some really awesome teachers, and I am so grateful that some of these people exist. I had a teacher in 7th and 8th grade, Mrs. Bohr, and she hit me up on Facebook after I started getting a ton of attention, just saying like she was proud and stuff. And what I really, she's one of the few teachers I actually remember, and it's because I remember her treating me like an adult. I remember there was one thing where I was being a dumb kid, being silly, and she just gave me a comment that's something like an adult would say to an adult, not treating me like a dumb kid. And I was like, whoa. I was like, I kind of felt dumb because I knew I was acting like a stupid child. Other teachers were just mean, flippant, negligent. You know, very few good teachers. And this is what made me hate school. Just bad teachers. Snooty, authoritative people who think they deserve respect simply because they're a teacher. That's not how it works. Got some super chats here. Ant Benjamima says, "Hey Tim, check your email after the show." Will do. And we're getting close to wrapping up. So if you guys have any questions you want to talk about, I'm just going to wrap up with Dude20 and the super chats about the Dick Show. I really appreciate the super chats. I know there are a lot of diehard fans on the Dick Show side who are going to just be like so angry. And here's my perspective on it. If you're a fan of the Dick Show, of course you think he's right. You're a fan of his show. You think it's funny. You like him. So they don't like it when I don't support him. Well, guess what? I don't blindly support anybody. I don't think the story is really that big. And based on their own argument, that the lawsuit's frivolous and Maddox is going to lose, in which case, why would I bother talking about a frivolous case? That's just not going to happen. Boar Creek Ranch said, talking about our event would be great. Honest coverage, also great. Not sure about the event, but Valorant says, Tim, try making lemon zest infusions with sugar. Really great stuff. No sugar. You don't need sugar. Sugar is a trick. Lemon juice has some sugar in it, but you just take a shot of lemon juice in that club soda. That's, you know, when it was like maybe 8 years ago, I stopped doing all the added sugar stuff. I stopped doing, you know, like cakes with like smothered in sugar syrup and stuff like that because I was reading about sugar being bad. And so all of a sudden everything tasted way sweeter, right? So I ordered a lemon, an Arnold Palmer. That's the sweetest thing I get because lemonade and iced tea. And the reason I get it is because it's like half sugar. So it's like, you know, I'm still drinking some added sugar. But I went to one place and they made it with sweet tea. And it was like drinking maple syrup. I couldn't do it. Too much sugar. Trust me, if you stop eating sugar for like 3 days and then drink a Coke, you'll be like, holy, it's just nothing but sugar. It's ridiculous. Sugar is fake news. Sugar is bad for you. Rebecca Arnold, thank you for the super chat. Somebody, let's see what we got here. Someone said, asking if I'd be interested in joining Float Plane as a feature creator. Oh, that's Linus Tech Tips things, isn't it? I'm interested to hear about what it is. Depends. Shoot me an email. I don't know if you're involved with Float Plane or what they're actually trying to do over there. So, but I'm always interested in learning and, you know. I'm asked, do I drink caffeine? Very, very rarely. This past week, I've been making a bad habit of having coffees. But usually what I do is I'll do just like a little bit of coffee and mostly milk. And I hate drinking caffeine. It's an addiction, seriously. So, you know, for the most part, I'll drink caffeine maybe like 3 or 4 times per year, if that. You know, and then it's ridiculously potent. People don't realize, a lot of people get migraines. A lot of people get headaches, and they don't realize it's because they're addicted to caffeine. Caffeine is in almost everything. It's in a ton of sodas. Coffee, for instance, everybody drinks it every morning. You really are getting addicted. There's even, you know, in tea and sugar and chocolate. Sugar is bad. Caffeine is bad. I wouldn't call myself straight edge because it's not like a moral thing, you know, where I'm like, you know, these kids who draw X's on their hands or anything like that. For me, it's just about like health and regulation. So too much sugar is bad. It makes you sluggish. It's just bad for you. I try to be healthy because I try to perform as best as possible. Like when I go skating, I can tell if I ate bad food. You know, if you eat crappy fried grease and then the next day try and go skate, you'll feel awful. Not even skate, but like try to perform, try to exercise, try to do something. You'll just feel out of it. But you eat something healthy, you know, some lean proteins, leafy greens, avoid heavy sugars, you know, increase the fat. Mostly protein, then fat, then sugar. Man, you feel really good. Especially when you do like a club soda with that lemon juice. And I'm telling you, that's a wonder tonic. Ethan Taylor says, you know the Day of Freedom thing? I heard Section B are going Antifa gonna be dead. I don't know. I'm being warned that there's like hardcore Antifa showing up. I made my video yesterday about this MMA group that's having a tournament the day before in Brighton, and they're encouraging their members to show up the next day. Sammy Ree says, history is written by the victors. If the Beitswas win, people in the future will believe Jay Peterson and others are alt-right. What you do, Tim, matters. Keep up. So let me just end this with talking about today's video. After I end this in about a minute, you should go over and check out my video from today because I explain what Beitswa means. It is B-A-I-Z-U-O. I misspelled it in my video title card, so you can see that, and then you can comment about how I made a typo. But this literally translates to white left. Let me read what Baitswa means to you, because, wow, it's apt. Check this out. This is in my video, so I seriously, after I wrap this up, go watch the video, but Baitswa is defined as people who only care about topics such as immigration, minorities, LGBT, and the environment, and have no sense of real problems in the real world. They are hypocritical humanitarians who advocate for peace and equality only to satisfy their own feeling of moral superiority. Sound familiar? They are obsessed with political correctness to the extent that they tolerate backwards Islamic values for the sake of multiculturalism. They believe in the welfare state that benefits only the idle and the free riders. They are the ignorant and arrogant Westerners who pity the rest of the world and think they are saviors. I think the comment about Islam was particularly interesting. So Adam Smith says, Tim has got to be right-wing at this point. No, that's absolutely not true, and the core of my values are center-left libertarian, not too dissimilar from Bernie Sanders, actually, but still dissimilar. I think Bernie Sanders gets a lot of policy stuff wrong. The reason why I would consider myself left is very simple. When having a discussion with my right-wing friends, we disagree on government regulation and regulation in general, because I tend to agree that there needs to be some kind of regulation, and when I take political compass tests, I am center-left. Plain and simple. I'm not gonna, I know a lot of people who claimed they were right-wing, and then when they took this test, they realized they were actually social liberals. And I was like, the problem is when the far, far left, like as far as you can go, are working in media, trying to convince you that you are right-wing because you disagree with them or you're to the right of them. People actually believe they're conservative, they're right-wing, when they're not. They're left. In fact, many of these people are progressive, social liberals who believe in equality and egalitarianism and government regulation and taxation and things like that. I don't think taxation is theft, plain and simple. I understand the arguments about taxation, but I think it's more complicated, so... Kenrick50 says, have you actually tallied up how much it would cost to safely go to a place like Venezuela or Syria to report? I can't go to Venezuela because I was accused of being a spy and forced to flee the country. Syria is also just prohibitively expensive and just not really worth it, in my opinion. For me. For other people, it makes more sense, but I'm not trying to be, like, overly arrogant, but I am high profile, and that would be really dangerous. Alternative JK90 says, since your report on the Cry Closet, I was digging the nostalgic synthesizer intro like it was an 80s college movie. Where do you get your music? I'm digging your taste in music. I get it through Epidemic Sound, which is a music subscription service that I get through Fullscreen. So Fullscreen is my network. They provide me with, like, services, and they consult to help me, like, improve my channel and things like that. Ultimately, I use the music library. I get unrestrained access to all of this music, and I frequently go through it to find different songs. And this was the latest song that I really liked, and that's what I'm using now. But it changes, Sakaba Joe says, are you following the Awan case? I don't think so. I don't know what Awan is, so I guess not. But we are over time, so here's what you should do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Click that thumbs up button. Go to patreon.com/timcast and become a patron to help me do the work that I do. Traveling is expensive. I just went to London, and I don't like to be overly, like, here's all of the money, like, I'm spending, but because, I don't know. Basically, it costs several grand to go to London and do reporting like this. Flights are expensive, hotels, and so I want to make sure that what I'm covering and traveling to is it's efficient, cheap, and matters. And that's the big challenge. So, I want to travel as much as possible. I don't want to light money on fire. So it's rough. I'm planning on going to London, and it's going to be expensive, especially when, Emily's traveling too, because she's helping produce the documentaries and things like that. And then it gets even more expensive. But hey, man, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. Someone, Its Color says, taxation is theft. When they tax me, some poor guy and give that money to a private company through subsidies. Yeah, there are some aspects about taxation that are definitely ripe for criticism, for sure. Overall, I think the problem is corruption and crony capitalism, and not the idea of taxation. of which I am for the idea. Like, I look at taxation like a subscription service, you know? My life is based on the shoulders of giants. I was born into a world that has roads, that has bridges. Like the bridges in New York and the tunnels were ridiculously expensive, and somebody had to build all of that, and it came from taxes. And I was born into a world where it already existed. So I'm kind of like, you know what, man? If you've made my life this easy, listen too, this comes from, like, I've traveled around the world and seen places that are terrifying, and then I come back to the U.S., and I'm just like, man, the U.S. is awesome. There's a lot of stuff to criticize it for. We have a lot of problems with imperialism, you know, not to be overly, like, hardcore lefty, but yeah, when we drone strike foreign countries, that's a big problem. When we're killing American citizens and journalists, extrajudicial assassinations, it's a big problem. But coming back to the U.S. and seeing all of this amazing stuff that has been built before me that I get to enjoy, I'm like, tell me how much I owe you. You know, there's a street in front of my house, and I get to drive on it. You know, there's water coming through my pipes I get to drink. And this was all built by people that I feel like I owe. Now, when I hear about, you know, military expenditures, yeah, there's a lot of problems with taxes. There's a lot of problems with how the government spends it, but that's more about the distribution and the allocation of taxes and not the idea of taxes as a whole. Forgive me for being overly lefty for the moment. Let me get these last super chats, and then we'll dip out. Rebecca Arnold says, I'm a church-going conservative who loves you because, one, it's good to listen to people you disagree with, and two, you don't pretend to know everything. I really do think I know a lot of things. Like, I'll play trivia games and get a bunch of questions right. But what's important to realize is that people do have unique perspectives. There is validity in someone saying that they view the world a specific way based on how they grew up and what they know. And if somebody lives in a rural place and tells me this is what they need for their community, why would I tell them they're wrong? I'd be like, well, I never lived in your community. I don't know what you need. So if you're going to vote for taxes in this direction and for gun rights in this direction, I respect that you are taking action that you feel is best for your community, a place I've never been to, right? So that's why I like traveling. That's why I like going to rural areas. That's why I like going to conservative areas, so I can be like, explain to me why you feel this way. And then I go, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't consider that. And I've actually lived in rural places where, I'll give you, I've said this before, but I want to give my gun story that I tell people. I grew up in Chicago, and so I've never really had a strong opinion on gun control or anything like that. I think there are some areas where gun laws are too lax, and I've even had gun instructors confirm that to me. But I moved to Miami, where I lived in the middle of nowhere with no police. We had a string of home invasions. People actually were murdered nearby me. And I had, for fun, a pellet rifle. It was a 22 air compression break barrel. And so we would just, you know, shoot balloons and other nonsense in our backyard. It was a big property, you know. Neighbors weren't super close. One day, someone hopped my 6-foot fence on my property and was snooping around my property with a flashlight. And we knew there were home invasions, and we knew people were murdered. And I knew the police were 40 minutes away. So I took my air rifle, broke the barrel, didn't load it, went outside, yelled, and fired in the air. Bang! I heard running, lights are off. We assumed the person left. Whenever I talk to my friends, like, I've got friends who are like far lefty, pro-gun control, like hardcore. I had a friend tell me that no one ever needs a gun for any reason and guns should be banned. And then I said, let me tell you a story. I explained what happened. I said I could call the police, but the police are 40 minutes out. So what do? We know there are home invasions. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, this person was planning on invading my home and killing me, like what happened to someone who lived about a block away from me. This really happened. Someone a block away from me was murdered in a home invasion. I said, should I, like, lock myself in a panic room? Should I buy a panic room? I don't have one. I can't afford one. I can't afford the construction for something like that. Should I resign myself to death, rape, murder, whatever would happen when someone invades my home? Or should I spend a couple $100 on personal protection in my home, make sure I take precautions, and then have an option if someone intends to do me harm and break into my house? And I think that was kind of like an enlightening moment to my friend who was like, I don't know. I'm like, right. In a city, it's easy to say you're going to call the police because the police are all over the city. There's a lot of them. But when you live in the middle of nowhere, it makes sense if you want to protect yourself. So Bernie Sanders said this: the gun debate is an urban versus rural issue. And I agree with that statement. And that's why I think a lot of people who live in cities don't realize that the world is different outside of cities. And I think the same can be said for a lot of people who are conservatives. They don't realize that the world is very different inside cities. With that being said, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all so much for hanging out watching. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Timcast. Make sure you subscribe. Thank you all so much for the super chats. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got everybody. It's usually the smaller ones that are missed, but I got everybody. Again, thanks for hanging out. I don't know when the next stream is going to be. Probably next Monday, because I'm going to be traveling on Friday night, so I won't be around. Rachel Wills says, taxation is theft does not mean all taxes are immoral. It is about raising the bar significantly about what taxes should be used for. I agree with that, but I don't think that statement is inherently left or right wing. I think that's just a fair statement. We want to make sure that people aren't being corrupt. We want to make sure that everyone is doing everything on the up and up, and, you know, there you go. Rachel Wills, I think you may have accidentally sent the same super chat twice. But either way, thank you for the super chat. It is now time for me to sign off. This video will be up on a playlist for the top 3 new stories of the day, and this is what I intend to do as like a secondary series to my daily videos. So now I'm not only doing daily videos, but I'm actually doing nightly, you know, 3 times a week. I'm planning on doing some kind of live stream, maybe even Sunday nights, so stay tuned. Richard Slammer will get your super chat in before we sign off. Tim, short time ago you had a culture war podcast on the subject of Gamergate, yet you said you were mostly ignorant about it. Here is an invite to come to the GG subreddit Kotaku in action. We did. I mean, the reason we did the podcast about it was because, I mean, I know about Kotaku in action. I go there, you know, periodically. It just depends on like what's happening in the news. But I can't remember exactly what happened. Oh, yeah, yes. Emily made a video for the Subverse YouTube channel about Far Cry that got posted there. And then we can see on the analytics when it gets posted. And then we saw something about people talking about bringing back Gamergate. Now I kind of feel like that was an ignorant assessment when we said like resurrecting Gamergate because people were talking about it. When I started to look more into it and realized that it never did end, the use of the hashtag for sure, but the culture war is literally the expansion of what Gamergate was. And so we're literally in it now. So I don't want to I'll go on forever, but thank you all so much for hanging out and watching. It is time to sign off. Hit that, I can never leave, exactly. Hit the thumbs up button. Everybody just hit it. And I will see you all tomorrow at 4 p.m. Once again, thank you so much for hanging out.